Welcome on board Ship of a New Story, and this is the 5th day on our joint journey and adventure together on experiencing the shift from becoming best in the world to all be best for the world. And on this 5th day we want to share the stories that we have found and also the stories of our own lives and the experiences that we have gained. In my case, this is about intentional decisions. Intentional decisions is a compelling model for raising awareness about the possibility of choice. It also serves as an ethical framework for our choices, and then in the 3rd step, it empowers us with the ability to choose. My name is Stellan Nordahl, and some 10 years ago, I was challenged by life. I found my newborn daughter, diagnosed with leukemia. And in this situation, I had a lot of experiences about how I looked at myself and how I looked at the world. And the stories that I've been told that we're supposed to face and equip ourselves to meet the future, I realized that those stories, they weren't true for me. I realized at that point that the future is something that I create. At the same time, I also had the biggest experiences in my life. My first daughter, she was born. She died, and my first son was born. And some of those experiences, the biggest in my life, I was told that they weren't existing, because when I looked at how the stories that I've been told, you know them all, law of the jungle, and second is the first loser, and you have to win to be able to find a loser. So the second is the first loser. And in that worldview that I've been taught, there wasn't room for those kind of experiences. I was trained in measuring stuff, in what I see is what I get, and that is the reality. And at this point, I had experiences that didn't fit into that story. So on one hand, I had the world map that I was taught, and on the other hand, I had my experiences that I couldn't say anything else than that they were real for me. So I had to make a big choice here. And I was, okay, the biggest experiences I have in my life, they must be true for me. So I choose to believe in them. And at the same time, I was a great analyst. I was good in making maps, and I was a I really love maths and physics and science. So I was great in connecting the dots. So what I needed for my own sake was some kind of a worldview map, model or whatever it was, where my experiences also were presented. And this is the intentional decision model. And to be able to tell you this model, or to tell you the story on how it works, we're going to use another worldview model first of all. And the most of the models that I had been taught up until that point, they were linear. So first this and then that, and the only thing that were in them was the measurable things. And then some years ago, I came in contact with another kind of a model that were not linear. And this is such a model, and it's called equal, all quadrants, all levels. It's also known as the tree metaphor. And the tree metaphor, it's actually just what it says. It's a tree, like this. It's a model by Ken Wilber, the father behind spiral dynamics. And very often when we look at the tree, this is what we see. But anyone who have been, of some reason, needed to move a tree or dig it up, realize that there is a huge system of roots beneath it, but we don't see them. So this tree metaphor is a perfect way to talk about the things we can't see. Up here we have the what's. We can also see that the tree has different sides. On the what level we have things that we were taught in school. 1 hour of math, and then another hour of English, and then you had maybe some science or whatever it was. It all ended up in CVs and in competencies. And in our organizations, we have roles and functions. And this is the personal side of this tree. On the right-hand side of this tree, on the what level, we have organizational charts. We have words like budget, financial results, and things like that. Physical stuff that is in the what's, and in some cases also in the house. So we can see that the crown of the tree is the most physical stuff, the results, more or less the apples or the fruits of the tree. Then we have the stem, the house, and then we have what can't really be seen. We can call them the whys. And when we talk about the whys, there are things like, on the personal level, personal values. We can call something leadership. And personal growth and stuff like that. And on the right-hand side, we have words like shared vision. Words like core values. And yeah, also how we treat each other. Maybe how we engage in a way of working or stuff like that. But what is also here is what is even below the why, the root. This is the fundamental assumptions on how we look at the world. What is true, what is not true. In many cases, we read it in a book, and there is one answer. It's in the end of the book, but you can't look at it because then you cheat. So that is one way of looking at it. So it says something in a book, and then we believe in it, or we have done something for over and over again, and then we believe in it as a truth. So here are fundamental assumptions, and this model again, it's called equal. All quadrants, all levels. And we're going to use this to be able to talk about the intentional decisions model. But first of all, again, why we want to use this is because it's a non-linear model. The tree, if you cut it down over here, the tree won't say, oh no, you cut down my tree, my crown and my stem, and now I die. Or it says, oh, you could cut off my root and the root system, now I die. It's actually, it dies either way because it doesn't separate it from itself. So this is a non-separated model, equal, all quadrants level, also known as the tree metaphor. And this leads into the intentional decision model actually. And the intentional decision model, it's actually a story about 4 trees that are in, we can call it in development of consciousness or something like that. First of all, we have this first tree. It has a crown, it has a stem, it has the beginning of the roots and the rest of the root system. The interesting thing with this tree is that it's only aware of its own crown and others' crowns. So the what level is visible for this tree. So the what level. It can actually count its own fruits, so it's very good in results. But this is the whole world view for this tree. So even if it's whole all the time, it can't see that it is, and it doesn't believe that there is anything else than the crown. The next tree, just next to this one, it looks almost the same. It has a crown, it has a stem, there is the beginning of the roots and the rest of the root system. This tree, it has the ability, just as the previous one, to be able to see the crown and the fruits. And it also has the ability to see the stems. And when it looks at itself, it can relate to the house. But it can also see that this tree can't see the house. So this is what it looks for this type of tree. We can denominate them. Over here we have the physical me. Here we have the formal we. those two types of trees, or organizations, persons, or they are more or less in a consciousness level where they only see the things that are above the surface. And measurement is what defines the world. The next tree, then something happens actually. It looks the same again. We have the crown, the stem, the beginning of the roots, and the rest of the root system. And in this case, this tree has the ability to see not only the crowns, the fruit of it, the stem, but also the beginning of the roots. So it has an ability to see that there is something more than just what can be measured. And this is something we call the why. And for those of you who have seen those kind of words before, maybe you've seen it in the why, how, what models, the Start with Why concept by Simon Sinek. And I also recommend this TED Talk by Simon Sinek about what makes great leaders inspire. And from this point of view now, we have come into something have happened. At this point, we actually believe that there is more than what can be measured, but we're still very close to what can be measured. So we almost believe that this can be measured. And we can call this creative together. And now we have the ability to see not only what can be easily seen, we can also see what is hidden. And then we have this fourth tree, and before I continue, I would say, I don't know how many trees there is in this wood, or in this forest, but it could be that there are more. Maybe it's not only trees, I don't know, and maybe trees is just because I can't grasp any other concept, or I don't have the concept of something else. But this tree, at least, it can see its own crown, the fruits of the tree, the stem, and not only the beginning of the root systems, but also the whole, or more or less the whole root system, and we can call that the root. We call this tree conscious, united. The interesting thing here is that we now have different worldviews actually. We can call it level of consciousness, and we can call it worldviews. We have a worldview over here which says more or less what can be measured. The reality is what can be measured. And this is where we often find I would say, the Western world. The Western world has a worldview where the machine is the fundamental metaphor or root metaphor for the worldview. So the machine in different types, it was the clock, it was the machine, and now it's the computer, which is the fundamental metaphor for this worldview. We also call that worldview victim mode. I can write it here. Because everything happens to us. Everything is from the outside in, and outside in is actually something that is talking about separation in itself. As soon as we talk about an inner and outer world, we actually separate the inner and outer. It more or less says there is a spatial difference between something called inner and something called outer. This is the concept over here. But when we move in here, we see that the tree is whole at any time, and even if I don't have the ability to see it, that means that from, for instance, the creative together level, the worldview looks like this. So it can see that there are values that are of interest and so on, but you can also see that those types of trees have values, but they don't value the values. And if you go over here, you have the ability to see the whole systems. And such a worldview, we can call that creator mode. That also needs to have some kind of a fundamental root metaphor. And if we use the tree, then we can at least see what the tree has to offer. And one question would then be, can you talk about consciousness when you talk about trees? And I would say that yes, even modern science says now that trees communicate, even if we don't know how they do it. So this is the concept of the intentional decision model. The interesting thing then is that it's not only describing this as some kind of level of consciousness. Maybe you've seen those kind of models. There is, for instance, the 7 levels of consciousness by Richard Barrett and the Barrett Value Center, which is another way to describe this. And there are also various models that have this idea behind it. But the interesting thing, at least from my point of view, is that the intentional decision model says there is a choice at any time, under any circumstances, to do either this or this. But to be able to do that choice, we need resources. So resources is some kind of a base for the choice, and the choice is fundamental assumption in this worldview model called intentional decision. So now I write it here, intentional decisions. So intentional decisions is a compelling model to raise awareness of the possibility of choice. It also empowers us with the ability to choose, and it serves as an ethical framework because there is a direction. Either you move in this direction or in this direction. Here we have empathy over sympathy. We have proactivity over reactivity. And we have engagement over attendance. And for those of you who are more interested in what this worldview model can offer, we have prepared 2 interesting links for you. Both of them are short links, bit.ly, and then it's intentional decisions, and the other one is with big letters ID line minus model, ID model, when we will put those links in the description of this video. So empathy over sympathy, proactivity before reactivity, and engagement over attendance. And that is actually a direction which is not only giving us a higher level of consciousness, it's also a direction that we call best for the world. And in that worldview, we are not longer victims of circumstances. We are actually creators of possibilities. And we can all be winners, because winners and losers don't define each other. And this is also a way of working with complexity. So the previous version of ourselves was a reduction of the system, and we reduced the system to make it simple. Now we keep and embrace the complexity, and instead we use principles, and we can use the dimensions of this model, empathy, proactivity, engagement, as guiding principles to be able to be best for the world. Thank you for listening, and thank you for taking part. Please comment in the comments, and please engage with each other and engage with us on the ship. We also invite you to follow our journey. This is the first year of at least 3 years on Ship of a New Story, and we will invite you all to onboard the ship. Thank you.